The forest was silent, too silent. The kind of silence that makes your heart pound in your chest because you know something is out there, watching. Thomas stumbled through the snow-dusted ground, his breath ragged and visible in the cold air. He had been lost for 2 days now, his phone dead, his body trembling with exhaustion and hunger. The towering pines above seemed to close in, as if the forest itself had decided he wasn't leaving. Then it happened. A low growl echoed behind him. He spun around, his heart slamming against his ribs. Yellow eyes glowed between the trees. A wolf. Panic took over. His legs froze, his mind screamed to run. But the wolf didn't move. It just stood there, staring at him, its breath rising in white clouds. Thomas whispered to himself, "This is it, this is how I die." But before fear could consume him, a sudden rustling behind him broke the moment. A massive wild boar charged from the bushes, tusks aiming straight for his chest. And in a flash of gray and fury, the wolf lunged, not at Thomas, but at the boar. Thomas wasn't supposed to be here, not in this forest, not on this lonely trail, not in this fight for his life. Just a week ago, he was sitting in a hospital room, staring at the empty chair where his younger brother used to sit. Losing him had broken something deep inside Thomas. The world felt too heavy, too cruel. He had come to the mountains to escape, hoping that nature might quiet the storm raging in his chest. The forest, with its cold air and whispering pines, felt like the only place where the noise in his head would stop. But as he hiked deeper, trying to push past the memories, he didn't notice the storm clouds forming or how quickly the trail disappeared behind him. Now, with his backpack nearly empty, his flashlight dead, and every bone in his body aching, he regretted every careless step. Each shadow looked like a threat. Each crack of a branch made him believe he wouldn't survive the night. And yet, somewhere beneath the fear, there was a small voice that refused to give up. He just didn't know that voice would soon be joined by the most unlikely companion, a wild wolf. The forest was both beautiful and merciless. By the third day, Thomas's legs felt like lead. His lips were cracked, his stomach empty, and his fingers numb from the biting cold. He wrapped his jacket tighter, but it wasn't enough. Every gust of wind seemed to cut through him like a knife. He tried to stay calm, repeating, one step at a time, just one more step, but the forest felt endless. The sun dipped behind the trees too quickly, leaving him swallowed by darkness. Every sound, the hoot of an owl, the snapping of twigs, felt magnified, as though the forest itself was alive and watching. He had no food left. The last piece of granola had been eaten yesterday. Thirst clawed at his throat, and his hands shook as he scraped ice off branches to suck on it. Then, as night settled, he made a fire, small, fragile, like his hope. He sat beside it, staring into the flames. Alone, or so he thought. That's when he heard it, the soft crunch of snow. Slow, deliberate. His heart pounded. He turned and froze. 2 yellow eyes glowed from the darkness, unblinking, locked on him. A wolf. Thomas froze, unable to move, his breath caught in his throat. The glowing eyes didn't blink, didn't move, just watched him from the shadows. His heart raced so loudly it drowned out the crackling of the fire. Every instinct screamed, "Don't move. Don't make a sound." The wolf stepped closer, its massive paws silent on the snow. Its fur was thick and gray, blending with the shadows of the night. A low, rumbling growl escaped its throat, but its eyes, they weren't just wild, they were curious. Thomas reached for a stick from the fire, his hand trembling. He held it out, a flimsy shield against a predator that could end him in seconds. "Stay back," he whispered, his voice barely audible. But the wolf didn't attack. Instead, it sat down just a few feet away, its piercing gaze locked on Thomas, as if studying him. The man's fear clashed with confusion. Why wasn't it lunging at him? Then, suddenly, the forest erupted with noise, branches snapping, a deep grunt, and pounding footsteps. Thomas spun around to see a wild boar charging straight at him, tusks glinting in the firelight. Before he could react, the wolf sprang to life, launching itself between Thomas and the boar. What followed was a blur of snarls, dust, and raw survival instinct. The scene unfolded like a nightmare. The wild boar was massive, its tusks slicing through the air as it lunged forward, determined to crush anything in its path. But the wolf, this wild, untamed creature, met it head-on with a ferocity Thomas had never seen before. The wolf darted and snapped, dodging the boar's deadly tusks with precision, its snarls echoing through the trees. Thomas stumbled backward, his heart hammering in his chest, as he watched the fight for survival unfold mere feet away. He wanted to run, but something inside him refused to leave. This wolf, this stranger of the wild, was fighting for his life. In a final, lightning-fast move, the wolf bit down hard on the boar's neck, forcing the animal to retreat into the darkness, squealing in defeat. Then silence. The wolf stood still, its chest heaving, steam rising from its fur in the cold air. For a moment, it looked at Thomas, not as prey, not as a threat, but as if to say, "You're safe now." Thomas's fear gave way to something else, a strange sense of connection. This animal, feared by so many, had just saved him. For the first time in days, Thomas whispered with a shaky voice, "Thank you," though he knew the wolf couldn't understand. Or could it? That night, Thomas didn't feel alone for the first time in days. The wolf, though still wary, stayed close, just beyond the glow of the firelight, its golden eyes flickering like two embers in the dark. Thomas gathered what little wood he could find, feeding the fire with trembling hands. The warmth wasn't just for him anymore. It was for both of them. Every now and then, the wolf would lift its head, sniff the air, and glance at him with an expression that felt almost protective. Thomas sat cross-legged by the fire, watching the wolf. "Why did you help me?" he whispered, his voice raw and hoarse. "You could have just let me die." The wolf tilted its head slightly, but made no move to leave. It simply stayed there, calm yet alert. It was as though an unspoken understanding was forming between them. Two lost souls who didn't belong in this cruel, cold night, yet somehow found comfort in each other's presence. Hours passed in silence, broken only by the crackle of the fire and the distant calls of nocturnal creatures. When Thomas closed his eyes for a moment, he felt something unexpected, safe. And as sleep pulled him under, the wolf never moved. It stood guard, a silent protector in the shadows. When the first light of dawn broke through the trees, Thomas woke to find the wolf still there, its fur dusted with snow, its sharp gaze fixed on him. He half expected it to vanish into the woods, but instead, the wolf stood and slowly began to walk away, glancing back at him as if to say, "Follow me." At first, Thomas hesitated. Was this some kind of trick of the wild? But his gut told him to trust the wolf. And so, limping slightly from exhaustion and bruises, he followed. The wolf moved with purpose, weaving through trees, crossing frozen streams, and pausing at times for Thomas to catch up. It was as if it knew exactly where to go, leading him toward life. Hours passed, and Thomas felt his hopes slowly returning. At one point, the wolf stopped near a cluster of berry bushes. Thomas recognized them as edible and filled his stomach for the first time in days. Every step felt like a silent lesson: where to walk, where to find water, how to move quietly. The wolf, wild and free, was becoming his guide. By the time the sun began to set, Thomas realized something incredible. He wasn't just following the wolf anymore. He was starting to trust it. Just as the forest began to glow with the soft orange light of sunset, a deep, guttural roar shattered the stillness. Thomas froze, his heart leaping into his throat. The wolf's ears shot up, its body tense and alert. From between the trees, a massive brown bear emerged, its dark fur bristling, its powerful frame towering over them. It had smelled the berries Thomas had eaten, and now its eyes were fixed on them with deadly intent. The wolf growled, stepping in front of Thomas, its posture low and protective. Thomas felt his blood run cold. "No, not again," he muttered, knowing there was no way the wolf could take on a creature this large. The bear roared and charged. The wolf lunged forward, snapping at the bear's legs, But the bear swung a massive paw, knocking the wolf aside with a force that made Thomas's stomach turn. For a split second, Thomas could have run. But something inside him screamed, "Don't leave him." The wolf had saved his life. He couldn't abandon it now. Grabbing the largest branch he could find, Thomas yelled with every ounce of strength left in him, slamming the stick against the ground, throwing rocks, making himself look bigger. His heart pounded as the bear turned its attention to him, its eyes blazing with fury. Thomas's arms shook as he waved the branch, but he refused to back down. Every instinct screamed at him to run, but he stood his ground, yelling and throwing anything he could grab. The bear roared again, slamming its paws into the ground, but Thomas didn't stop. Meanwhile, the wolf, still dazed from the bear's strike, struggled to get up. Thomas's eyes met the wolf's for just a split second. An unspoken promise passed between them. He wouldn't let the animal that saved his life die here. In a final desperate act, Thomas hurled a heavy rock, hitting the bear's shoulder. Enraged, the bear turned toward him. Thomas's heart pounded so hard it hurt, but his plan worked. The wolf, now back on its feet, took the chance to lunge at the bear's flank, biting and clawing with wild determination. The two of them, man and wolf, fought as one. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. Finally, with a thunderous roar, the bear retreated into the trees, crashing through the forest until its growls faded into the distance. Thomas collapsed to his knees, breathing hard, the branch slipping from his shaking hands. The wolf stood a few feet away, panting, a small streak of blood on its fur, but still alive. "Thank you," Thomas whispered, his voice breaking. But deep down, he knew the wolf was thinking the same thing. After the bear retreated, Thomas sat in the snow, trembling, not from the cold, but from the realization of what had just happened. The wolf limped toward him, its golden eyes meeting his. For a moment, there was no fear between them, no barrier of species, just two survivors bound by an unspoken trust. Thomas tore a strip from his jacket and, with slow, careful movements, wrapped it around a small cut on the wolf's leg. The animal didn't growl or pull away. It simply watched him, as if it understood this act of kindness. The next morning, the forest looked different. The sunlight filtered through the trees, warmer and softer than before, and Thomas felt a strange pull in his chest, hope. He followed the wolf again, his steps steadier this time. He no longer saw the wolf as a threat, but as a guide, maybe even a friend. By late afternoon, Thomas saw something he thought he'd never see again, the faint outline of a dirt road winding through the trees. Civilization. Safety. He turned to the wolf, a lump forming in his throat. "I guess this is where we say goodbye," he murmured. The wolf tilted its head, as if listening, then took a slow step back. With one last look, the wolf turned and disappeared into the wild, leaving Thomas with a story he would never forget. Thomas stood on the edge of the forest, watching the wolf vanish into the shadows, its silhouette swallowed by the trees. For a long time, he didn't move. His heart felt heavy, but there was also a warmth inside him, a sense of gratitude that words could never express. In just 2 days, a wild wolf had not only saved his life, but had shown him something extraordinary. Trust, loyalty, and courage aren't limited to humans. They belong to every living being that chooses to protect rather than harm. As Thomas stumbled onto the dirt road, he looked back one last time. Though he couldn't see the wolf anymore, he whispered softly, "Thank you for everything." When rescue teams finally found him hours later, Thomas had only one story to tell, a story no one believed at first. But he didn't care, because deep down, he knew the bond he shared with that wolf was real, and that moment would stay with him forever. The moral of the story? Kindness and courage can bridge the gap between worlds. Sometimes, we need to trust those we fear, and in doing so, we might discover something profound, that even the wildest hearts can show us the true meaning of loyalty.